students. Today we are going to see chapter 3 from the book Gulmohar, The Language for Life. The title of this story is Homesickness. It is written by Roald Dahl. Dear students, before I tell you the summary of this story, let me explain you the title, Homesickness. Homesickness means when you are away from the house, you have constant thought of your house, of your family members. That is what homesickness is. Means thinking more about the house when you are away from the house. Dear students, this story is a biographical story of the writer, a real story that he is sharing with us, a real story that has happened in his life when he was a child. Students, the writer says that when he was away from the house in a boarding school, he had a constant thought of his house, of his family members. So he just wants to trick the hostel warden so that he is given few days leave to go home. The idea comes from his own experience. In his family, his sister was suffering from appendicitis. The writer had seen the experiences and the feelings of his sister when she was suffering from the sickness called appendicitis. So he tells the hostel warden that he is having an appendix, due to which he has severe pain in his stomach. When the hostel warden calls the doctor finds out after the examinations that the child is not really suffering from the appendicitis. The doctor came to know that the child was actually having homesickness. He actually wanted to go home. So the doctor tells the hostel warden the purpose of creating this story from the writer was actually to go home. So with the request of the doctor, the warden allows the child to go back home for few days. So dear students, this is what the short summary of the story Homesickness. Now I will explain you the paragraphs. After I read each paragraph, I will tell in short what the paragraph tells us. I was homesick during the whole of my first term at St. Peter's. Homesickness is a bit like seasickness. You don't know how awful it is till you get it. And when you do, it hits you right in the top of the stomach and you want to die. The only comfort is that both homesickness and seasickness are instantly curable. The first goes away the moment you walk out of the school grounds, and the second is forgotten as soon as the ship enters port. So dear students, the writer tells that he was having homesickness during the first term of his school life at St. Peter's. St. Peter's is a boarding school. So he tells that homesickness is like seasickness. Students, seasickness means the feelings that you have, feelings of vomiting that you have while you are traveling by the ship. Due to the movements of the ship, you feel like vomiting. In other words, we can say those of us do not have the experiences of going by the car, jeep to the far places, we feel vomiting inside the vehicle. So also while you travel in the sea, you feel vomiting due to the movement of the ships. That is what homesickness is. The writer tells that you don't know how painful it is unless and until you suffer from the homesickness. And he too says that both the sickness, seasickness and homesickness, are instantly curable. How it is curable? Homesickness, as soon as you come out from the school ground, you do not have the homesickness. So also when you reach the port, you do not have the seasickness. I was so terribly homesick during my first 2 weeks that I set about making a plan for getting myself sent back home, even if it were for only a few days. My idea was that I should all of a sudden develop an attack of acute appendicitis. So dear students, the writer is telling us that first 2 weeks of his boarding school was really terrible. He had terribly homesick. And he plans such a way that his plan will be successful, so that he will be sent home even if for few days. What was his idea? What was his plan? He thinks that he should develop a sudden pain of appendicitis. How does this idea come? Does the child know what is appendicitis? We'll come to know it in the next paragraph. You will probably think it's silly that a 9-year-old boy imagined that he could get away with a trick like that, but I had sound reasons for trying it. Only a month before, my elder sister had actually had appendicitis, and for several days before her operation, I was able to observe her behavior at close quarters. I noticed that the thing she complained about most was a severe pain down in the lower right side of her tummy. As well as this, she kept being sick and refused to eat and ran a temperature. So students, we know that writer was 9-year-old when he was sent to the boarding school at St. Peter's. So how did the idea come to his mind? He had seen before few months that his sister was suffering from appendicitis, and he had seen her behaviors very closely. He knew where she had actually the pain. He knew that those who are suffering from appendicitis, they are little sick, they do not eat, and their temperature, their body temperature increases more than usual. So these are the tricks that he is going to play before the hostel warden. You might, by the way, be interested to know that his sister had her appendix removed not in a fine hospital operating room full of bright lights and gowned nurses, but on our own nursery table at home by the local doctor and his anesthetist. In those days, it was fairly common practice for a doctor to arrive at your house with a bag of instruments, then drape a clean sheet over the most convenient table and get on with it. So students, writer is telling us that how his sister had got removed her appendix. The writer tells that she had her operation not in a fine hospital but in their own nursery table at their house. and not by the well-known doctor but by a local doctor and by his anesthetist. And in those days, when the doctors are called home, they come with a bag filled with instruments. So also the doctor came with a bag of instruments, wore the dress that usually they wear for carrying out the operations, and the operation was done in their nursery table. On this occasion, I can remember lurking in the corridor outside the nursery while the operation was going on. My sisters were with me and we stood there spellbound, listening to the soft medical murmurs coming from behind the locked door and picturing the patient with her stomach sliced open. We could even smell the sickly fumes of ether filtering through the crack under the door. So the narrator is telling that along with his sisters, they were just standing outside the door of that nursery table, and they were observing, listening all the talks, all the pains, and whatever the activities was going on inside that particular room, they were observing it. They were able to see how his sister's stomach was being cut and appendix was being removed. They even felt the smell of the ether, which was usually used during an operations as an anesthetic. Thank you, students. The next paragraphs we will discuss in the next video.